I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask everyone to stand for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello and welcome, everybody. Before we move into our agenda, I do need to ask for a motion to make an amendment to our agenda for a new hire.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, first by Chris, second by Deb, correct? Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, and I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed high school principal, Dr. Dell, to do the introductions.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm very excited to be here after having this job posted for about 6 months. So, joining us this evening is Mr. Kyle Sprague. I'm going to be recommending him to the board that he be hired at the start of the second semester for a full-time science teaching position at Williamston High School. Kyle has a Bachelor of Science degree from Michigan State University. He has certification in physical science, integrated science, and mathematics. Kyle's been teaching at Corunna High School since 2015. He's taught AP chemistry, chemistry, and physics. He's developed an unmanned aircraft system drone course that prepares students to sit for the FAA unmanned aircraft certification exam. And the course also earned program accreditation as a CTE or Career Technical Education Aerospace program. So in the classroom, very qualified, has done a lot of cool things for students, and especially with his drone course outside of maybe just the typical high school courses that students are used to taking or seeing in the curriculum guide. So we are very excited about that potential. Outside of the classroom, he's worked on both curriculum development and implementing modeling instruction into the science department. He served as National Honor Society advisor. He was part of a team to evaluate, choose, and implement a one-to-one program within his school. His references speak extremely highly of him. They say that he is going to be a huge loss for their department and school as a whole. And as such, I enthusiastically recommend his candidacy to the board tonight for hire as full-time science teacher at Williamston High School starting with the second semester.
This is pretty impressive. I'm pretty excited to see your, I have a store-bought drone that I can't keep off the ground, so this is exciting to see where this goes. Any other questions for Dr. Dell or Mr. Sprague? Am I saying that correctly?
Correct.
Sprague. All right. No. All right. Can I have a motion for our new hire?
I make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education hire Kyle Sprague to be a teacher beginning on January 22nd, 2024.
Second.
Okay, so I have a first by Sarah, second by Dave. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Welcome to our district. Yes.
You'll be having my daughter second time, so.
Congratulations.
I know that for sure, I don't know if else knows. I know that.
Good night, thank you. Okay, we're going to move into our agenda on citizen comments. This is a time for anyone in the audience that would like to address the board. You have 3 minutes, and this first set of citizen comments has to do with anything on the agenda. Do we have any citizen comments? Okay, we're going to move right along. Celebrations, Adam.
Good evening. Celebrations for this evening feature 2 stories on the website. The first one is that for the 5th consecutive year, Williamston High School was named one of the country's best high schools by U.S. News and World Report. It's a pretty impressive string of successes that a high school has, but as always, we look at these as K-12 recognitions due to all the hard work that all of our faculty, parents, and students have put in to make those, to earn that type of recognition. So congratulations to all involved. There is a really large banner. You can't miss it as you walk into the athletics wing of the high school. Next, I mentioned this at our last meeting, but I don't believe I had the story posted yet, but the girls golf team came in second in the state, and kind of a cute picture up there of the Young Fives class cheering them on as they departed for the state finals. Most of them got their signs up at the right time, but not everybody. But congratulations again to all involved with that achievement. Volleyball, not featured on the website, but they had a really impressive streak last week, beating Lansing Catholic and Hazlitt on back-to-back nights to win the district championship. And they move on to Grand Rapids to play in regionals tomorrow. And also not featured, but I do want to, we do this every year, and it's always one of my favorite events, the 6th grade band concert combined with the high school marching band. It's just always an awesome thing to see kids where they are now, and then where they're going to be in a few years when they get up there into the high school ranks. And of course, also just really cool to see those joint performances. And wow, do we have a lot of kids in the 6th grade band. So I know we've been getting kind of this COVID slide with participation in some of the performing arts that most districts have encountered, but that looks to be rebounding quite significantly here at the middle school. And our band teachers, as always, do a great job. So that was a couple weeks ago, but also wanted to point that out. It was a tremendous event. So those are celebrations for this evening. Pending your questions.
Any questions for Adam? All right. Moving on to education update. Part of our update is our audit presentation, our exciting audit presentation. We have these nice bound books. Very thankful for. Tell us the good news. We're ready to hear it. You promised
Perfect.
$2 million.
There's a lot of good news in this audit presentation. So, for those I haven't met yet, my name is Nick West. I'm a manager at Manor Costerison. I have with me Tori Waller, one of my colleagues who helped me out with the audit. I had a really good meeting with the finance committee a couple weeks ago. Kind of went into detail on all those big books there. I think they're about 70-some pages. So tonight, just going to be going over the highlights. But if you have any questions on anything in that financial statement, feel free to ask any questions at the end. It's just going to let me click through it all. Might not. Yeah, there we go. So very briefly, Manor Costerison, who we are, a CPA firm here in Lansing. We've got about 140, I think 150 so people. We got about a third of our staff are dedicated to the education niche, to audits throughout the summer and the fall. We perform over 100 school district audits annually. I think we're up to actually about 116 for fiscal year 23. Jumping into the audit. So in the front of your financial statements there, you would find on pages 1 through 3 the auditor's report. And in the second paragraph, you would see that we expressed an unmodified or a clean audit opinion on your financial statements. This is the highest opinion that we can provide you as your independent auditors, and it's also consistent with what the district has received in years past as well. So kudos to the district on a clean and a good audit this year. Next, we would have the management's discussion and analysis, or MD&A as it's commonly referred to, just a Reader's Digest version of your financial statements. In there, you talk about any highlights, comparative information. So if you don't want to read all 70-some pages, feel free to just read the MD&A. At the end of it, we do have a factors bearing on the district's future paragraph. This talks about some items coming up in the district's future, such as state funding. It's kind of going to be a theme of my presentation, kind of funding through the state, federal funds as well. Kind of talks about some of that in the MD&A. So what is new for fiscal year 23? The biggest thing was GASB 96, so SBITAs, or subscription-based information technology arrangements. Essentially, GASB, if you had any of those, such as maybe online curriculum, you'd be required to book an asset and a liability at your government-wide or your full accrual level of accounting. For Williamston, you guys did have some of these submittas, but it did not have a material impact on your financial statements. As such, you won't see any changes for this year. But it is something that is effective going forward for future years as well. And then while it's not new, the ESSER funds, I have to talk about those. You did spend about $1.3 million of those funds this year. I believe you have a little bit remaining for fiscal year 24 as well. Just a reminder, those are required to be spent by September 30th, 2024. Talking with Adam, talking with Sarah, I think you guys have a good plan to spend the rest of those out through fiscal year 24 is what it sounds like. So next, we have the statement of net position on the government-wide. So just a reminder for those who aren't familiar, schools almost keep two sets of books. You have your fund level, which is what you're probably used to seeing, and then you also have a government-wide or full accrual level. On here, you're gonna have capital assets, long-term obligations as well. So some highlights from your statement of net position this year. You did increase your net investment in capital assets by $5.2 million. Essentially, that tells us you're paying off your debt quicker than your assets are depreciating, which is always a good sign to see. You did pay off about $4.5 million worth of debt this year. And unfortunately, if you can remember my presentation from last year, I told you the pension, the OPEB liabilities decreased significantly. Well, they flipped on us this year and they increased significantly. Just a reminder though, those are state-funded liabilities. The district has no control over your proportionate share. You're just required to put your proportionate share on your books. So those increased this year just due to poor investment return, particularly around September 2022, which is when that liability was measured. But you'll see that does lead to a net deficit of around $26.2 million for the district. Just a reminder again that 99.9% of districts in the state of Michigan have this large negative net deficit because of that pension and OPEB liability. On your guys' books, that's about $42-ish million. So you factor that out, and you'd have a large net position. So if we jump into the fund level, the statement of revenues, expenditures, changes in fund balance, you did have 4 major funds this year: the general fund, sinking fund, capital projects fund, and debt service funds. You can see the capital project sinking fund, you were able to add to fund balance this year, got that out of the net deficit that you kind of been in for the last couple of years, so that was good to see. Additionally, you did spend down that capital projects fund. Those funds you kind of set aside the last couple of years, you're able to spend those down on some capital projects. And if we look at the general fund, so you ended up having about $27.2 million worth of revenue against $25.6 million worth of expenditures, which let you add to fund balance by about $1.7 million or so. So as about 22% of fund balance as expenditures. If you look at some metrics across the state, the statewide average last year was about 19.2%. Ingham ISD average was about 19.8%. You guys were around 18.6% last year. This is as expenditures. I know you guys measure revenues as well. This year you're at 21% or so fund balance as a percent of revenue. I always usually go off of expenditures, but very, very similar, pretty close. So you can see the 23 numbers are not quite out yet this year, just due to all the audits being due last year. But I would anticipate 22.4% probably being somewhere around the average as well for the state. So, and the reason all these fund balances, the averages have increased so significantly over the last couple of years, just due to all the additional revenue and funding that all these districts have received. So you've gotten the ESSER funds, you've gotten large increases in your state foundation allowance for the last 2 years, a lot of categorical grants from the state of Michigan that they've given as well, which has luckily been able to allow districts to kind of bump up their fund balance and save some money to set aside for the rainy day. Or I'm talking with Adam, I know we've discussed, an impending possible fiscal cliff, talking about what happens when these ESSER funds run out, what happens when the state doesn't increase the foundation allowance by $500 every single year like it's done for the last couple of years. So it's been nice to see that the district's really been able to kind of save and set some funds aside in case that fiscal cliff after fiscal year 24 does end up happening on us. So, and just to show you too, I think this chart really gives a good indicator. That big orange lot there, that's your revenue from state funding. So you can see 77% comes from the state of Michigan. So really any increase or decrease, any changes at all at the state level is going to drastically impact not just your district, but all districts across the state. It's probably hard to remember, but 3 years ago, the state of Michigan, all of a sudden in August, decided they wanted to take away $450 per pupil, led to large deficits in districts all across the state. And that's like I said, any changes really at the state level is just drastically going to impact you. So again, very good to see that you guys have been able to save during the times that are good, and then maybe when times aren't as good, you're able to use some of that fund balance to continue to enhance your programs, keep your staffing levels as you see fit. If we look at a 3-year trend on revenues, kind of backs up what I was just saying. The blue is the state, the orange is the local, so that's increased as well from property tax value increases over the last couple of years. And then the gray is probably hard to see, but that is your federal revenue as well, which primarily has been driven by the ESSER funds over the last couple of years. Looking at expenditures in the general fund, spend about 57% of expenditures on instruction, about 39% on support. Statewide average is, you're right on the money, pretty much 57% is what most districts across the state spend on instruction versus support. And if we look at a 3-year revenue or expenditures trend in the general fund, again, you're going to see the large increases, a lot of those due to the additional categorical grants that the state's given out, the ESSER funds. One thing that was new this year, the state did give a bunch of retirement funding as well to districts to kind of pass through, to kind of pay down that pension and OPEB liability. That hasn't been reflected in the year-end number for the pension, so hopefully we'll see that number go down next year when those funds kind of get into the system, but that's drastically impact and increase expenditures as well for districts. And then the notes of the financial statements, kind of the meat and the potatoes is what I would call them. Really just some highlights here for you. Note 1, we do talk about that we audit your sinking fund in accordance with section 12.12.1. So the state does require all sinking fund expenditures to be audited annually, and there we're looking to make sure that those expenditures are being spent according to the state law on what they should be spent on, accordingly that your internal control procedures are being followed. Happy to tell you, no instances of non-compliance. All the expenditures that we reviewed were appropriate for the state law, and all your internal controls were being followed as well. So good job by the district there. Your debt millage rate, remains at 7.84 mils at the end of the year. Most districts I work with are in the 7 to 12 mil range, so you're kind of on the average to lower end, I would say there. And then notes 4, 6, and 8 talk about capital assets, long-term obligations, and then pension and OPEB. Looking at a budget to actual comparison, had a balanced budget for your original, final ended up calling for an increase about 678, and as I mentioned before, you increased, added about $1.7 million this year. Variances, if we look at those, had a positive variance in expenditures and in revenues. Expenditures was about $643,000. That's about 2.2% of your total budgeted. Revenues was $341,000. That's about 1.2%. You know, anytime you're getting under 3%, 2% for budgeting, those variances, very good. I would say anytime under 5% is good. So anytime you're able to get even lower than that is really good budgeting by the district. So great job kind of putting together that budget. Just so you're aware too, a lot of schools, it's very common to have positive swings from your final just due to the state of Michigan. If you're even $1 under what your final budget says, that's required to be written up in a finding, so a lot of districts are typically a little bit conservative on that final budget number just to be safe and kind of add a little bit of cushion there. And then this is probably my favorite chart in the financial statement. You'll find this at the very end. And there we talk about any internal control issues over financial reporting, same thing with your federal awards, compliance issues with federal awards. I'm happy to tell you none of those this year. No material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies over either federal awards or financial reporting. We did audit the ESSER funds this year, as you probably could anticipate, and again, no issues there. Everything was spent according to how the federal government says that they're supposed to be spent, and your internal controls were followed as well. And then finally, we do issue a governance letter to the board, and there we talk about any uncorrected misstatements, disagreements with management, really anything that we thought we needed to bring to your attention outside the normal course of the audit. And again, happy to tell you, none of those instances. Sarah and her team, they did a really great job. Thank you to Betsy, to Sarah for all their hard work and their help over the audit and really helping put together a good, clean audit for us this year. So with that, that was really all I had, so I'd be more than happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Are there any questions?
Very thorough.
It is very thorough. Thank goodness. I just want to thank you for putting this together, and thank Sarah and Betsy. I know, I'm sure this took a lot of work to gather whatever they needed, so I do appreciate that. To the board, I know that this can sometimes, especially this big thing, can be overwhelming, and there's a lot of words and a lot of stuff, but I think it is important that we somewhat, as board members, have even just a very global understanding of what all this means. So if you get home and look at this and have questions later, or, I mean, we don't know what we don't know, and maybe think of questions after you get home, please reach out to Sarah. Sarah or Adam, I would lean more on Sarah because she does a really good job of putting it in elementary terms that, and I don't mean disrespectfully, but just we can understand it. And
what we know and what we don't know.
well,
Absolutely.
I mean, we do have if you haven't sat on the finance committee, sometimes this can be a lot and overwhelming, and we do have all of that bond stuff coming up, and we're trying to talk to the community. So if we don't have an understanding of what our general budget looks like and where we are, that's gonna be really hard to do, and we don't wanna get those facts messed up. So, if you have any questions later, I would definitely reach out to Sarah. Chris, is there anything you wanna add as the chair of the finance committee? Or?
No, well, I mean, I mentioned this at the last meeting, but it was a very good audit, and I commend Sarah for all the hard work. I know that it's definitely not an easy thing to go through, especially as a new school year starts. But we keep getting better, and every year the audits are getting better, and, and I think next year's even gonna be better than that, So I'm excited about how well the audit came out, and if you do have questions, I echo what Nancy just said about reaching out to Sarah.
I do also thank you you do a very nice job in making it simple to understand and putting together, so I do appreciate that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you know what you know, right? Yeah, so my wife's a vet, and so I don't think about what kind of our dogs, I just kind of let her do that. I work on my stuff, you stay in your own lane, so.
Yeah.
There you
I'm
go.
glad to hear that I'm able to kind of tone it down to a level that you guys feel comfortable understanding.
Yes.
So thank you very much. If there aren't any other questions, we can move on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
All right, I do want to back this up. This is part of our board goal too. It kind of all wraps into hearing about our goals and where we are, and this will be part of, we'll discuss it a little bit more as we get closer to Adam's evaluation. So really, if you have any questions right now and just aren't even sure how to ask them, I do reach out to Sarah sometime in the next week. Okay, next, I do believe is our famous Dr. Cook coming up to give us, I'm sure, some even better news.
Oh, yes. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here, and I know that this board presentation is going to be on assessment data, which can be dry, but it's important, and it does go with Board Goal 1. I've heard that quite a bit, so I wanted to make that statement. See if I get this right as I go along.
I don't think it's working.
Oh, did you do that or did I? I don't know. Tonight's agenda is on the MSTEP, PSAT, and SAT data. We've added the advanced placement AP results, which is new for a presentation. Our NWEA fall measures of academic progress, which is what we term MAP. And of course, at the end, any questions or comments that you might have. So for MSTEP, for 3.8, the top graph, it shows Williamston's proficiency trends, which is rising since the pandemic. On the ELA, which is the next couple of slides, MSTEP, our 3rd through 8th grade students, they scored close to a 60% proficiency rate. The bottom graph shows the trend data for us. Our peer groups and all state LEAs, and as you can see, we are rising while the other groups are almost flat. In comparing Williamston with the other 13 county districts, we ranked either 2nd or 3rd place. We ranked 2nd place in grades 4th and 5th. We ranked 3rd place in grades 3, 6, and 7. And notably, we ranked second in the county on the PSAT in 8th grade, which is a celebration. This slide, it's showing trend and cohort data since 2015 in ELA. This year, our trend data showed decreases in 3rd, 6th, and 7th. The trend data showed increases for 4th and 5th, but notably, our PSA 8 trend data rose from last year by 1.3%. And the celebration is within our 5th grade cohort, which rose by 14.1%. You know, there's a lot of information on these slides. So now we're going to look at math. In math, as shown in the top diagram, Williamston's proficiency stayed stable and higher from our low score in 2021. In the lower diagram, you can see that we have maintained a much higher proficiency level than our Ingham peer districts or the state districts. Within the county, Williamston ranked 3rd on the M-STEP Math State Assessment in 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 7th grade. Williamston ranked 2nd in 6th grade, and our big celebration is in 1st place ranking in the county on the PSAT 8. This slide shows, again, trend and cohort data since 2015 in math, just as it did in reading. This year, our trend data showed increases in grades 5, 6, 7th, and 8th. Cohort data was overall a little lower in our elementary. Cohort data was notably, it rose across our middle school in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And our big celebration is our PSAT trend data, which rose last year by 20 percentage points. We made improvement in the area of social studies in 5th grade, rising above where we were for the last 3 years. From last year, we rose by 2.7 percentage points. Another 8th grade celebration, we jumped 11.9 percentage points in 1 year, while peer and state districts remained flat. We have consistently scored above our ISD districts and the state over time, as the data shows, in both grades. The 11th grade data shows a marked incline in our proficiency score, gaining 11.7 percentage points. Our percentage is above both our peer districts and the state. Last year, the focus in 11th grade social studies was on instruction, MTSS, and their school improvement goals. We're now seeing the benefit of the team's instructional practices. In 5th and 8th grade science, our science proficiency continued the trend of rising from past years and increased 4.4 percentage points in 5th grade and 9.9 percentage points in 8th grade. The increase brought both grades to an all-time high. We look forward to continuing the trend with the addition of our new science program, Open SciEd, that was board approved, thank you, last spring. And our peers rose slightly, but the state districts actually dropped. A celebration in our science scores, the 11th grade science proficiency rose 12.5% over last year. Our percentage is almost to our high proficiency dating back to 2017. We are now trending upward and past our peer districts and the state. So we're going to move into SAT, our 2023 evidence-based reading, writing, and then math. So a celebration, we were second place for our evidence-based reading and writing portion of the SAT. The only district that ranked higher was Okemos in our county. Our evidence-based reading and writing portion of the SAT scores have been both above Ingham peers and all other state districts. We have been fairly stable since the COVID years, as shown in the graph, whereas county and state districts both took downturns this past year. We were second place for math, the portion of the SAT, which is cause for another celebration. And just as we saw with the evidence-based reading and writing, the only district that ranked higher in our county was Okemos. Our math SAT score did drop by 3.3 percentage points, yet we were still second in the county. Our county peers showed a slight increase while the state districts had a slight downward turn. Since 2016, we have consistently ranked higher than our peers in the state districts. This is going to be Williamston High School's AP classes and exam scores, which we have not really looked at in the past. This slide is an overview of the number of students in classes, exams students took in the different subject areas, their average scores, and the percent of students who scored a 3 or higher to obtain college credit. Students do not need to take the class in order to take the exam. As shown in the score summary, many more students opt to take the exam than are enrolled in the classes. The percentage of students scoring a 3 and higher, it is based on the students that are enrolled in the classes. In 2023, enrollment has gone back up close to the 2019 student enrollment count. Again, a lot of information, I know.
So
Now-
I want to jump in too before we move on. So another celebration. So as you can tell, on the walls over here, we have posted a banner every year that we were awarded the College Board AP Honor Roll. And this year, again, we received that recognition. I think it's the first time since 2019, and I think it's probably the highest scores we've had since that year as well. So, so we have a new banner that we'll be able to put up in the boardroom to celebrate our inclusion in that distinction. So again, congratulations to all involved with making this happen and hard work of our staff and students.
Thank you for showing that, Adam. Now we're going to go on to NWEA, and this is through second through
Michelle, can I
eighth
interrupt
grade.
you? I'm sorry.
Sure,
If we have questions, you want us to wait to the end, or do you want us to ask right now?
you can ask right
That's
now
right
if
now.
you'd like.
So can I go back to the other side? I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So for our AP scores, the top, it says number of exams. So for like 2D art design, we had 5 kids take that exam. That's what
Correct.
that's stating. And like in biology, we had 1 kid. Calc, AB, we had 15 kids. Is that
Sorry,
correct? Am I?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yes, that's correct. That is correct.
Okay.
can't see from back
No, I just want to make sure I'm reading your chart correctly. Okay.
Yep, any other questions on it?
No.
Okay, I
Good,
know
thank
it's
you.
a lot of information.
Do we know the reason why some kids don't? Like, as I was thinking the same, like I was looking at macro and microeconomics, where we had like 2 students take AP exams throughout both of the classes, but psych had like 37 take. So is it,
I'm
do
sure
we
it's
know
been-
any reasoning why they don't take it if they're taking the class? I mean, I always assume you take the class if you want to, don't pay for it later instead of just taking the class for.
My thought would be, and this is just my own thought, is if they're not interested in that particular field, that it's not going to really benefit them. That's
Something
what
that they're
I
not going to
think.
take in college anyways.
Right.
Okay.
That's the way I would look at it. But obviously, there's a lot more students that even take the exams when they are interested than even
Mhm.
sit in a classroom,
Okay.
because they feel that they have that aptitude and can get the credit for it.
Right.
Have we ever done, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Deb.
I just wanted to ask if perhaps the fees that are involved in taking the exam might prevent some students from taking the test? They have to
There's
pay
a-
it themselves, right?
There's a program that we have that would cover the cost if a student can't afford to take the test.
Do you know what the rate is nowadays?
Early rate is 110, I think it is. Is the early rate, and then it goes up from there.
That's per exam.
That's per exam.
Yeah.
The one question that I had was, have we ever done any type of assessment of all AP students post-test for those that do or don't, to identify, especially those that don't, to identify why they have not done that?
We have not, so we can look into that in the future. That would be a good assessment.
Maybe some good
Look into, yeah,
assessment data to get a
Yeah.
better feel if it is that like you surmise, or if it's that they want it because they want the weighted grade. And they're taking the class because they wanted the weighted grade, but they had no intention of taking the exam.
Right, yeah.
Or some other reason.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that.
Well,
Do
and
it, sir.
I think it would be good, information also to, so granted, my kids were in school a long time ago, so I don't know, and there's even different teachers. But if you took an AP class and you weren't taking the AP exam, then you took a final in that class. So it would be interesting to know, do these teachers, like in biology, there was one kid that took it, so in AP Bio, are there 25 kids in that class, and did 24 kids have to take
Yeah, final
like
exam.
their final exam and this one not, or how, like, it would be interesting just to have information on that, like, it would just be I guess, not as much interesting to know how many, like, do they offer that test, but can kids pass that test in the classroom, but yet they don't feel like they can pass it here?
Or there's
Or the
just a
AP, or what
reason.
the reason, yeah,
Right, what the reason
what is the reason?
So that's a great way, you
Yeah,
can look
or-
at that population and kind of take that data and see who does take the final exam,
Yeah,
What-
and
what
why
part of
the
that,
others.
yeah, population.
And if we
then
could
takes
make it, like even put in there, because you wanted the weighted grades, and make it confidential, so we don't know, like just check a box,
Yeah,
because that would be good information for us.
Well,
I also want to point out, it is pretty amazing that we have like all, like the 3 art classes. I
well,
mean, there's
and
3.
but some of these are being taught through MVU as well.
Or guided
Oh,
Or guided
yeah.
study, or guided
Right.
study, yeah.
But, I mean, I don't remember seeing like art design on there, I think that's pretty impressive. They're not just taking that, I mean, like my daughter took AP Calc and didn't take AP Calc, but I would not just sign up for an art class because I like to think I'm artsy, but I am not, so I would not be able to like take the art
But you can teach
exam.
physics.
they- yeah.
So I think that's pretty impressive too, so. Okay, I'm sorry, I just
No,
wanted to
don't
clarify,
be.
make sure
I think it's interesting, thank you. Thanks. So we're gonna go on to NWEA. I've repeated this before, but since it's about a once-a-year presentation, I just thought I'd review the measures of academic progress is what MAP stands for. It's a computer adaptive test created by Northwest Evaluation Association, which is where you get the NWEA. We use this, and we do very much so use this as our benchmark assessment. It's given 3 times per school year. We utilize the results to place students in our MTSS intervention classes. After each assessment period, the teachers, during a data day, they reassess to make sure students are placed appropriately within our WIN system. To best give an overview of where our students' mean reading scores are, and the RIT again is like a measurement that just will tell us how high a student has reached specifically and individually for themselves. The scores are over the course of a year. The data shown is for last year from fall, winter, and spring assessments to give you an idea of the growth. From fall to spring, the norm grade level mean RIT does increase, so the target is higher to reach. The largest percentage increases were in 2nd, 5th, and 7th grade. Other than 8th grade, all grades showed over 60% of the students above the norm mean RIT for spring, with 5th grade at 72%. And though 8th grade dropped on the NWEA assessment from fall, they were 2nd in the county on PSAT. This chart is showing fall-only data for years 2019 to 2023. Students are in the grade for just a few short weeks in the fall when the benchmark assessment is first given. NWEA had a new version this year. This version had more questions within the grade level to better gauge the students' understanding of grade level content, and is not yet understood if the comparison from past tests is apples to apples. Just wanted to let you know as you see the scores. And each grade had a higher than 60% of their students scoring above the mean RIT, with fifth grade, again, over 70%. And fifth grade showed the largest trend data gain at 5%, more students meeting or exceeding the mean norm RIT. And this is all in reading. So now we're going to look at math, and to best give an overview of where the students' mean RIT math scores are over the course of the year. Again, the data shown is for the last year's fall, winter, and spring assessments. From fall to spring, the norm grade level mean RIT increases just as it did for reading. The largest percentage increases were in third and seventh grade. Seventh grade had the largest increase by 13% from fall to spring, and an additional 9% from winter to spring. Though eighth grade did drop on the NWEA math assessment from fall, they were second again in the county on PSAT.
I just have a question. So have you guys looked within the eighth grade class to see why they dropped in both of those, segments over that time, or to see?
We have not yet looked at that. So we're meeting, we're doing district data days a week from, or the 13th, 14th, and 15th. So
Okay.
in a week and a half approximately. And we'll do some diving then. And the teams themselves have just been meeting.
Okay, thank you.
So then I have another question. So
Sure.
I'm assuming that when they take the test in the fall, they're being tested on what they should know kind of up to that point. And then when they take it in winter, they're adding stuff to it for what they should know from that point. And then for spring, adding in there too. So when we're doing these NWEA, am I saying that correctly, and all of these, then the other like M-STEP, or not M-STEP, like all of our state tests fall into that springtime also, correct? So what is it, what is that window? Are all of these tests happening within a 2-week period? Because, if I was a kid taking all these tests in the spring, I would kind of be like, so I could see where some of these are dropping, because it's,
Right. It's
I
not
want to
a
be out of school, it's hot,
Mhm.
I'm testing. There's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, it's about a 6 to 8 week period of time.
Period
So
window.
I open up the window for NWEA, and we control
All
that.
okay.
So we try to minimize the impact of spring break and knowing when M-STEP is going to be given. I just, in fact, sent that out today because I had received that information of the specific M-STEP assessments, what date those are going to fall
That
on.
window, yeah.
So we try to keep our benchmark assessments at 12-week intervals to 14, 16 at the most. But we look at that very intently and intentionally for our students because everything is so backlogged. And what we've been doing is they had been doing the NWEA after they're doing the M-STEP. Because we come back from spring break and we hit the ground running. But it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot for our kids.
These are a lot of
You
tests.
would, I would think that you would see kind of that lower percentage in the fall because, for lack of a better term, that summer slide that can happen with students. But it's not necessarily showing that in the data.
Correct. Well, it is looking at the students, what they know,
Mhm.
right, from the past year. But I do believe that it adjusts to the level that they are at. So I think that number, as I said before, for the RIT score is
Yeah.
a lower ceiling. And then it really raises higher as it goes through. And so that's where I think we're seeing the better scores in the fall because the actual norm-based levels of RIT is lower overall.
Have we, and I know you haven't, I think you said you haven't had your data
Right.
day.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to see how the kids did that were in our summer programs.
It's on my list.
Is it on your list? I would like to
For
see
this year.
how
Yes.
that looks.
So we're showing you the NWA data in aggregate, but it's a nice overview. But the real power of this is it's designed to really focus on the individual learner. So when we look at core goal one of the things the board has stuck with over the last 10 to 15 years, and it's very expensive to do, right? We pay a lot of money to staff who focus on this and provide different levels of intervention throughout the year, is that robust multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS model. And it's an expensive investment, but the NWEA data is really designed to show teams of educators how students are, what their response to instruction is, and in a timely manner adjust, if applicable, the interventions and supports that are being provided to those students. So whether that is an after-school program, the summer program, or just the types of support they're receiving throughout the day at the different tiers, right? So remember the triangles? We don't show that as much anymore, but that's designed for those teams of educators to look at each student and then not in 3 months, but in the next week, respond with a different customized instructional program to meet those students where they are. And that has been our bread and butter in Williamston for almost 2 decades. I would argue we do that just about as well as anybody. And when you look at the growth level of our students over the course of their time, when they start here to when they finish, that model is responsible for a lot of that success. So it's a good overview, right? It's good to look at this, and it's also good to kind of triangulate the data, right? So how do we do an MSTEP? How do we do an NWA? How are we doing on our local assessments or SAT, other nationally normed assessments? You kind of take all that together, it gives you a nice snapshot. And you can see big picture, right? Where are we? Well, we were kind of knocking it out of the park pre-COVID. We took a pretty steep drop for obvious reasons, and we're rebounding. And so the path forward is to continue the successful momentum on that academic rebound. Of course, we're also dealing with a lot of other social, emotional, behavioral needs as well. So it's a pretty complicated instructional environment right now. But I mean, I think on the whole, it's showing that we're moving in the right direction. But again, just kind of keep that in mind, especially when we're looking at NWA. It's really about focusing on the individual student and how we can assist that learner throughout the time over the course of a year and over the course of many years.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really helpful with taking the NWA 3 times a year, specifically in the fall, early, like you get it done with before October 1st, so that when you do meet in October as teams, you can say, this is right now information. And I love that about the NWA as opposed to MSTEP. You have to wait until the next year to see where that student is. And that way, with the NWA, you can make those interventions, like Adam said, those tiers of supports to say, this student just needs tier 1, this one needs a little bit more intervention. So it seems early to have NWA, so early in September, but it's so beneficial and so helpful for you as educators to figure out, I shouldn't say figure out, but to decide where each student's needs need to be met more.
And it drives our MTSS
Yeah.
process. And every 2 weeks, they progress monitor. So
Yeah.
it gives us even more information as
Yeah.
we go through our
And that-
system.
Yeah, it's not set in stone too, so if a student might need 3 times a week, MTSS or intervention needs, that could change, and they could maybe need only 2 times, it just depends and it varies, and I think that's what's so nice about the NWA is that it's so specific to each student.
Right, and it really, as a curriculum director, it really gives us a chance, like have been using Delta Math, which is out of Ottawa, and that's really specific, and we're trying to get some more steam with that too, because it really gives you the assessments, it gives you where the child is, gives you the lessons, and it gives you the end result of the progress monitoring, so we can really be flexible. And I know that a lot of our students struggle with math, where we focus a lot at the early levels on reading, which we need to, because even math is reading. So we really try to bring in interventions that show the skills that NWEA show us that we're in need of. So, yeah, it's,
I just want to add, and we'll talk about this in January at our planning meeting, our goal planning meeting, but from someone who was here in part of the team when all of the monthly tiers of support started, it used to be called RTI, at the very conception almost 20 years ago, we were the only district in the county that did it the way it really should be done. We spent the money, we budgeted around it, and we did it, and other districts didn't, and other districts don't do it with fidelity and reliability, and it shows. So I will be here forever. I'm guessing Adam's not gonna be here 20 years from now, but if that is one thing we continue to spend our money on, I would hope whoever is still sitting here in this room or in these seats continues that, because being someone who travels in the county and sees what they're doing, it makes a difference that we stick to it and do it the way that it should be done.
Yeah, sitting on ISOA, even just last year, a surrounding district, I mean, just right up the road, just said that they just now started doing NWEA testing. And we've been doing this for how many years now, Adam?
this is our third or fourth year, Adam. I know
Prior to
it's-
NWA, we've used other
Yeah.
screeners, Amesville Plus,
Right,
Amesville,
yeah.
Pebbles,
Yeah.
Fast Bridge.
Now it's,
Right.
It evolves based on what the research is showing is the most accurate
yeah.
metric.
But this is good, and I do want,
Almost 20 years doing, I mean, it started, like 20 years, well, probably not 20 years, maybe 15,
Yeah.
16.
Oh, could be 20.
Maybe close to 20.
could
Close
be,
to
and
20.
I will
Is it really?
add that our
Yeah,
I
ISD
15.
feel like I'm not that
recognizes-
old, but, yeah.
Our
that's what I
ISD
go. Okay,
rec-
anyway, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Our ISD is recognizing the need
Yeah.
for the county, and I just signed us up for the spring. They are going to hold an MTSS, kind of like restart. They did it last year, and they're gonna do it again this year. And so it really helps to get that guidance from them as well on best practice. So we're part of that consortium as well. Okay. So for the cohort math data, this chart is showing again the fall data for 2019 to 2023. Students are only in the designated grades again for a few weeks like they are in reading. This year, the new version, as in reading, also applied to math. Our cohort data shows gains and regressions depending on the grade. Our 5th and 6th grade trend data both showed a decrease from last fall. Our 7th and 8th grade trend and cohort results both went up. Our largest gains was in 8th grade. Their trend data went up by 13% and their cohort by 16%. Any other questions or comments that you have? I know it's a lot of information.
Any other questions? So again, this is part of, piece of Adam's evaluation. It's one piece. So this does go towards board goal 1. So in the next week or so, as we're filling out Adam's evaluation, if you have any questions or need a little bit more qualifications, I would reach out to Michelle or reach out to Adam to get those answered.
Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you.
a lot.
Okay, superintendent's report, Adam.
Upcoming events and presentations in December, there'll be an update on athletics and enrichment programming, and in January is the board's organizational meeting. Also remember in January, separate date is the board's goal workshop, which will be facilitated by MASB. A quick update on where we're at with the bond process. There'll be a kickoff meeting with Chrisman, French Associates, and ourselves on November 20th. And then in speaking with our attorneys, they have made a slight deviation from the plan I talked to you about previously as far as the contracts. And so what they have proposed is that we do a temporary contract with both firms at no cost to the district, and those contracts would put us through the date of the election. There's a financial clause in there that if we were to switch the firms we were using after the election, there's a financial obligation that we would have to those firms. But we don't anticipate that would be the case. So what this does is it allows us to get to the date of the election. Once that's taken place, then the very long, detailed contract can be worked on at that point, once we have a more solid picture of the financial environment that we'll be working on, which, again, that's going to be about 8 months from now, so still some time. So I will keep you updated on those, and obviously bring those to the board to review at a minimum once that first iteration of those contracts are done. But again, to reiterate, that would not cost the board any money, but it would provide the services in the pre-bond phase to include the informational campaign that precedes the election, and make sure all those services were provided, again, at no cost to the district. A quick overview of the November 1st professional development. The entire district participated in a school safety presentation provided by Secure Education Consultants, or SEC. That's the same firm that we contracted with last spring to conduct our most recent vulnerability assessment. It's a very expensive course that they provided to us at no cost, and so very appreciative of them with their generous offer and investment in continuing our focus on school safety and making sure our staff are informed on how those processes work. Additional training that took place, or professional development that took place that day, Kids Corner Little Hornets focused on their literacy curriculum, also working on developing their student learning objectives, or SLOs. These are the data that's used to identify individual learning targets for students, kind of going their version of NWEA, where the students are at and where they're hoping to be able to get them to. And then, of course, what are they going to do to guide students towards that goal? I also want to recognize Rebecca Olson, our director, who got all aspects of their professional development registered as Michigan registry courses. So all of those different classes that were introduced counted for their program PD credit for all of their staff. At Discovery, they had a session led by the ISD training staff on autism, and they continue to work on their literacy curriculum, which is in its second year, as did Explore, while also working on math intervention programming. At the middle school, they reviewed their NWEA results, as we just spoke about. And just to back up, so the way these work, right, we have often grade level teams that look at NWEA results, and then we can have school teams, and then you have district teams. And the district is the district day-to-day that Dr. Cook talked about, where they kind of bring that data, their takeaways and conclusions to the district level, and then we are able to discuss those and get into a more nuanced conversation about goals and next steps. They also worked on looking at technical reading and writing and depth of knowledge, or DOK, which is the level of rigor that's integrated in both instruction and assessments, and culminated that activity with a learning walk where they were able to share their takeaways with fellow faculty members. And then finally, at the high school, they continued their work on Board Goal 5, standardized grading practices, and also for the second year in a row did the DOT activity. This is something that was introduced to us last year, and the high school tried it, and the middle school last year, and then the high school went back and did it again this year. But the DOT activity is a way of checking in with staff to ensure that all students have a trusted adult, or an adult in the building that they have a relationship with. And so they will list all the students in the building, and staff are able to put a dot by each of those students that they have a connection or relationship with. And what it does is it gives you an overview of who are your students who have a lot of adult support and interactions, and then who are your students that might be, to use that term, slipping through the cracks or under the radar. And that allows them to figure out what our next steps might need to be, if any, for those kids. So that was something that was, like I said, started last year, and it's really powerful. And when you look at even going back to school safety, the relationships with students is more important than doors, cameras, windows, all those other physical security aspects. Just having those positive relationships, not only for safety, but academic behavioral and social emotional growth. So that was a quick recap of November 1st PD, busy day. Really appreciate the leadership of our administrators and continued efforts by our staff throughout the district on our goals.
Any questions for Adam about upcoming presentations or the PD So next is Adam talking about an enrollment recommendation.
So last year, the high school came and presented that, a proposal that the board consider a pilot program with Ferris State University focused on concurrent enrollment. This is where members of the Williamston High School faculty who have the adequate credentials and certifications are able to teach essentially as adjunct faculty members of Ferris State those courses at our high school for our students. There are a number of benefits to this, and in the pilot run that we've had so far this year, in those two sections, Dr. Delp has illustrated that in the memo in terms of the numbers of enrollment. We found that this has been a successful endeavor, and would like to continue it and expand it. So the first ask, so to speak, is that the pilot label be removed from the initiative. And then the second ask is moving into next year, that 4 courses listed in the memo, all focused on social studies and humanities, get added to the list of courses that our staff are able to teach as adjunct faculty from Ferris State. The plan moving forward is, even though the board would remove the pilot label from the initiative, that the individual courses continue to be brought to the board for review and discussion as they are brought on board. So we would not teach a class that the board had not had a chance to approve individually, but that this would instead, however, be a long-term commitment and partnership with Ferris State, which, as you might recall from last year, has a number of benefits for the student, the school district, and the individual faculty members who are teaching the courses.
You know, one thing I would request, I think, is just like we see on AP, would be is in the fall to do a report out of results of students in regards to looking at how they are doing
How they do in the course.
in those courses as we move forward. I mean, I think the ones that are listed there are great, and I think the more that we can offer that, it's a great opportunity for our students, but it would be nice to see a breakdown and a report out of how our students are doing in those courses as we add more.
I think just even the simple thing of like how many got credit and how many kids were in the class and how many got credit. Because when you're looking at having our AP, like if we have, I mean, I agree with you, I don't know how many kids are in the class, even if there's 20 kids in the class and 1 kid's taking the test, I would like to be able to shuffle it, and if there's however many kids are here, did you say, however many kids are in that class,
57.
if 57 kids got credit in that.
But we've also never seen any type of reporting out of students that are taking LCC credit or anything to that effect. And I don't know, maybe we need a more comprehensive report of looking at all of these different programs that students are taking advantage of and how students are doing and succeeding. Because I know that we've had a lot of students that take advantage of them.
Right, some of the students, I don't know, I guess I would have to, I mean, we do have students that take some LC classes, I'm sure, online, that are kind of part of that, but we also have students that take them during the summer on their own.
Yeah.
And pay for them, so this would just be.
That'd be
for
different. I'm talking about just
here.
Yeah,
to
just
look,
here.
But, yeah, good information.
Yeah, I think that's important because it's our faculty, in this
Yeah,
case,
right,
teaching
right.
the class
Yeah.
versus
LCC.
LCC or MBU classes that are not taught by our teachers, although they certainly help facilitate those and guide those in many cases. But yeah, I think that's good data. We don't have that yet because the semester hasn't
Right.
ended, but I think that's definitely something we'd want to look at. I have a hypothesis of how that's going to compare to our AP credit. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be right,
Yes.
but yeah, I'd be happy to get that to you when applicable.
I would also like to hear our faculty's feedback, especially this first semester, or even next semester, moving forward to see
Like what Ray
challenges,
thinks.
strength, things like that.
Or are you asking if Ray could come back and speak?
He would be the only one from this
Yeah.
semester,
Yeah.
currently, yes.
He'd be in.
Yeah, but that's what I'm just
Yeah,
asking, is if
yeah.
you're asking if he could come back
Yeah.
to speak to us.
Yeah,
I do know,
just give a recap, I
Um,
guess.
I do know one of the challenges that Mr. Herrick faced initially was that, not surprisingly, there's not the cohesion that we have in our district in terms of around what's taught and how it's taught. So when you looked at the syllabi for the course, he had to navigate multiple syllabi taught by different adjunct faculty. So it wasn't just like, here's the class, it was like, here are the classes. And then he had to take those and kind of build his course based on those different, so, and, you know, all of us know this, right? When you move on to college, they're not gonna have the same type of scope and sequence, and they're not attached to standards necessarily. It's very much down to what the faculty member thinks you should be learning. And so we've discovered that. It could be more so the case potentially in the humanities. We'll have to see. This will be our first try at those classes, but it also allows the professional autonomy of a Williamston faculty member to take that, use their professional expertise, and build a course. It's not the first time our staff members have done that, so. But yeah, we can either have Ray come back or get some cliff notes from him and present that later this year.
Okay, one more question. I don't remember discussing that, so you maybe start to refresh me. But what kind of process is it? I mean, I don't need details, but is it easy to get our teachers accredited, or is that a onerous process?
So there's and forgive me, I don't know the name of it, but there's a college association that basically certifies that faculty have they have the credentials to teach college level courses. And so what happens is our faculty who believe they might have those credentials submit them to Ferris, who then submits them to that certification board, and then they come back and let us know if they are able to teach those classes. There is still a 2-year window. If you think back to last year when Ferris State came and presented, there was a 3-year window. Now it's down to 2, in which interested Williamston faculty can start to pursue the courses they need to be able to teach those classes. And there's kind of this trusting relationship that they will continue to make the progress they need in their graduate studies, so that when that 2-year window expires, which is a hard deadline, it doesn't continue to move. That at that point, if they don't have them already, that they'll meet the certification requirements for those classes. And as we branch, math is relatively straightforward. As you branch into the humanities, it's going to become a little more complex because again, think about world civilizations. I mean, world history, right? Nobody has taken enough classes to teach everything that's ever happened. So, how that certification board looks at a transcript and then decides if our faculty are already meeting those credentials or certain courses they'll have to take to get there is still going to be somewhat unexplored territory, but we feel confident that we have the faculty members to take these on next year, and if there's any adjustments that need to be made, they can invest in that continued education. The other reason this is important to bring to you now is the high school would like to have this in their course guide for January and February, so that's why the timing, bringing to you in the meeting in November is what it is.
Any other questions? So we're gonna, if everybody feels comfortable, we'll move this for a vote in December, and there's kind of 2 pieces. Taking the word pilot off, this is a pilot program, we'll be doing it, and voting for these 4 classes to begin the process or see what they can do.
I just want to, last thought, I mean, I know we've talked about this before, but we're pretty confident that this is the future moving forward, and the whole point of this initiative, which was 2 years in the making before you even saw the presentation last year, is to get in front of a trend that we know is happening. High school kids vote with their feet, and there's nothing that we're going to do to stop that trajectory. If we get in front of it, which is the whole point of this, it's going to be extremely beneficial for our students because they have Williamston teachers focusing on those classes, but also beneficial to our staff, again, assuming they have the proper credentials. So I think that's the impetus for continuing to kind of keep our foot on the gas with this, because the trends with our student enrollment at the high school are pretty noticeable that this is where things are going.
Well, we kind of thought that we would have a strong interest, but we kind of thought maybe only one class, but Ray's teaching two, right? Or
Two
three?
sections each semester.
Yeah, two, okay. Yeah, so there's enough to have two.
This is
There's
it.
also
Classes
been,
for
and we can talk about this more in January, but there's been, again, as members of the board know, conversations for years about, you know, Math Science Academy and how do you replicate something like that in the area of the humanities and kind of provide those acceleration or more rigorous opportunities for students that are interested in the humanity. I mean, so there's a lot of answers here, potentially, but it's also something that the students are saying, you know, they want in on. So, larger conversation we can have in a couple of months, but I think this is definitely part of that larger solution.
Adam, does Mr. Harrop, is he allowed to pick his own resources for the classes that he does? I mean, it kind of has like, this course teaches this, but is he allowed? And the same thing for the, you know, if we're looking to approve the history courses, do they have to use the literature that Ferris State requires for those courses? Or does he get to choose what literature he uses to teach those courses?
So I think that was one of the lessons learned, and Mr. Herrick might be able to talk more about this, you know, when we get to that point later on this year, whatever that mechanism looks like. But I think our impression was that they were just gonna give you, like, here's the syllabus, right? And go teach it, and that's not really what happened. They gave him multiple things to look at, and he kind of had to formulate that. So as we pivot to the humanities, I think the book answer, from what I understand, is that they're just gonna hand, this is it, this is the course. We didn't necessarily find that to be the case this year, so I think that'll be a bit of an experiment to see how that works as you pivot into more of the humanities type of classes.
Well, because my only concern is, I mean, we're in a very political environment right now, and college campuses are in a lot of the major news about the classes that they, especially on the humanities front. So I would just make sure that we still follow, like as the public high school, that we still own the curriculum that's taught in our school, even though it's applying towards a college credit. There's, you know, a lot of conversations where people say, well, those conversations are for like a college campus when you're, and so to bring those into a high school, I would still want to make sure that whatever those curriculums that are being taught are still, I mean, that was kind of the one thing we talked about, is whether or not we are approving curriculum still that is giving college credit. Math is a little bit different, because it's, as you said, it's a pretty black and white kind of thing where.
But if I take it at, I mean, I don't know how, like, I'm just remembering, and I could be remembering it wrong. When the woman was here talking about it, they do have those guidelines or books or whatever, like, this is what, like, here's the stuff you can't just necessarily go rogue. I look at this as also as, so we have to kind of, like, trust Ferris and the curriculum that has to be taught in these classes, and we don't necessarily get to say, oh, we don't like that, you don't get to teach that, and still have it be a Ferris class. To me, this is where parents need to step in and ask for that syllabus, and ask what's being taught in that class, and if they don't want their 16, 17, 18-year-old kid to have that yet, then they have to say no. They have to be a parent. So
I do agree with that. I just don't know if that information is available to us as readily, or parents, based on what he said. They just kind of give it and say, okay, create. So then it is kind of putting our teachers in a position of creating.
Well, creating the, and granted, I just talked to Ray kind of on the sideline, so I don't want to make this official. But it wasn't like they said, here's the open statistic world, go crazy. It kind of is like, here are these 5 or 6 things you need to choose from here. Now, you can choose one from here, one from here, one from here, like, but this is your map. So
I tend to agree. I think they're going to give them there's going to be parameters. There might be a little wiggle room, because again, if you had 4 adjunct professors teaching U.S. history to 1877, they're going to have different reading lists and et cetera, right? So there's going to be probably a little bit of flexibility there. And you know, we'll have to grow into this and kind of see how it unfolds. I mean, it is unique, and pivoting to the humanities does open up some different conversations. I would point out that, again, it is a college course for college credit by a university. And you know, we have similar arrangements already. Lansing Community College being an example. Like, we don't certify or review that curriculum. It's a choice those students and their parents are making when you decide to take a college class. It's a little different. 'cause
It's a little
our
different, right?
teacher.
Because LCC, they do have to go, or it's in their
I-
house. Here, they're
I-
just like coming to school on a regular basis and going
So
to
I-
class like a regular.
So I do think
so.
that's a challenge at the high school level as the course guides go out and as that communication with parents takes place over the course of the winter and the fall and then into next year, that again, it is this reminder that it looks like the teacher you've heard about, maybe even had a previous class with, right? It's that same person, but what they're teaching now is for college credit and it's a college course, even though it's still in the same building, so. Yeah, that'll be a piece that we'll have to monitor and, you know, kind of make some adjustments potentially based on what we see.
Do you have parents of our students, like freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors, when they're signing up for the classes that they want to sign up for, do they have to have a parent's signature before they turn that in?
Yes.
Yes,
It's a form. It's a Google form you have to sign.
So you know what your kid. I guess then our responsibility would be on that form to make sure that it says Ferris, whatever it says, Ferris College, what is it, what is he teaching, statistics, whatever.
Mhm.
But, I mean, if parents have to sign that form, then they're saying, okay, you can take this class, and they've done their research to do that.
They'll also get the syllabus when school starts in the fall. And, you know, if there's something in there that they find objectionable, there's drops and adds, I mean, there's a process
Mhm.
in place there too, so.
Perfect.
But I agree with you, the political environment and what people can take and what people think we teach and what we don't teach in is, you know, all over. I do think though that we can't, not move in this direction because we have neighboring schools. I mean, we have a housing issue and we have neighboring schools. Bath sends, I think it's 95% of their juniors and seniors, they bus them to the community college and that's where they get their lessons.
I think we should do it. I totally, I just think that we should have
kind of
more
Be moving.
checks and balances so that the parents know, so that, you know, we all know, we're all always put in a situation where somebody after the fact was like, I had no idea. And then it's like, we're trying to give you as much information, so it's just making it crystal clear that this is a college course in our school. This is not the
Right.
same as you're having an LCC online. And this is, you know, and so that the contents might be a little bit different than what you may have in a normal high school history class. Because it is becoming a little bit more mainstream. As you said, everybody's doing it, so I think I would love to have every student leave here in the high school with an associate's degree, so that they don't have to pay more money to, you know, colleges to get their bachelor's. So anything that we can do along that way, but also just protecting the school and our teachers that are teaching it as well, that it is a college course.
Okay, so if you have any more questions on that, I would get with Adam, otherwise we'll move that to vote on, when, December. I do also want to, I mean, this is kind of that first step, they still are vetting those teachers, and if no one signs up to do US history to 1877, then I'm assuming we don't have a class. So, this is kind of the first step to say we're in and see where it goes. Any other questions?
Was there a minimum, I couldn't remember, and I thought I asked the question when Ferris was here. Is there a minimum number of students for a class to be a go? Isn't it like six?
Yeah, well, we tinkered with that in this memo a few times, and I'm trying to,
Oh.
so it says,
Maybe I
it's the
missed
last
over it.
sentence in the second paragraph. Running the
Oh,
courses
yeah.
will also be contingent upon student interest
Yeah.
and minimum enrollment numbers required by both Williamston High School and
Yeah.
Ferris State. And one of the things we have to look at is, it's still a Williamston High School faculty member,
Right.
and we have other demands for seats, right? And so we have to look at that. If you got, 5 kids that really want one of these courses, that's gonna create massive overloads for other faculty members because we're, using an entire hour just for 5 students. That section might not run, just like it might not for an AP class or an elective course. So, that is a potential
So it's a
variable.
mutual agreement between.
It's gonna have to be mutual,
Yeah,
mutually
because I
agreeable.
know, like, for instance, LCC, certain classes, it's a minimum of only 4 students. But what you're saying is like, that would not be
I
feasible.
don't see a concurrent class
Yeah,
taught with 4 students.
yeah.
And would these courses replace the AP History and the AP World History.
I would,
Typically.
I think that's where we're
Yeah.
headed.
Okay, that's what I was guessing, but I
Yeah.
just,
But it could be a scenario where we had 20 students sign up for AP World, right, and 20 students sign up for
You
this.
could also,
I mean, I think
have that.
it's just gonna depend on what,
you
I
could
wouldn't
have
do
that.
that, I would just sign up for
The
the
issue
knowledge
is
class,
staffing.
that would be,
the issue would be staffing, because it would probably be the same person.
but,
And-
right, so I think they're looking, I mean, I would hope if we had that many, they could do 2 classes or something.
It's just AP courses are supposed to be college level courses, and these are literally college courses.
Yeah.
So that's where,
And
I
there's
know
a
which one
difference
I would sign up
between
for.
taking one test and getting a certain number
Yep.
on it
Right.
versus being able to get grades through
Yep.
the class. Okay, any other questions on that? All right, moving on to purchase of a leased bus. Adam.
well, this is a continuation of the transportation plan that we established, well, for many years. We talked in great detail about this last year, that this would be coming, so this is bus 13, I believe. Remember last year, we had a little hiccup with one of the buses that we were buying off lease, but this has returned to the normal process of what we understood to be the agreement with the vendor. And quite frankly, this is a phenomenal price, as have all the buses we've purchased off lease over the last several years, with that one exception that still not exactly sure how that happened, but wasn't on our end. In any case, this would be our last leased bus from that time when we were really in facing some fiscal challenges, and the only way we could add new buses was to lease them. But this will be purchased, and then at this point, all our buses will be owned.
And what is, are we looking at purchasing this now, or would it be at the end
It's
of
when the lease expires, so it'll
At
be
the end
purchased
of-
at the end of the school
the
year.
school year? Any questions about the leased bus?
I don't think we'll ever see a deal
No,
like
we
this
will
again.
not.
I mean, it's hard to buy a car for that, and they're getting the whole bus, so.
Mhm.
Will this replace a bus that we have right now?
No, this
Or
is
just
a,
add
This
to
is
it?
one,
this is a bus.
we
we
have.
have.
So we don't have a bus that needs to be,
Not to my
Not yet.
knowledge, unless something unexpected happens.
I was
and
gonna
we
say-
not on your
I was
table
gonna say,
right
this
now.
way, this way.
Got a long way to go. We gotta get through the winter,
Yeah,
so.
okay, any questions about the bus? Okay, then we will move that for the December meeting. Second, Adam's evaluation. Just a little overhead, we do Adam's evaluation now. In case there was ever a point where we did not want to renew a superintendent's contract, that gives us like a 6-month window ahead of most everyone in the county, if not more than that. Most people do their superintendent's reports in April. This, when we hired Adam on the advice of an MASB person, said, you know, you really should do it now. So this is why we do it now, it gives us a little bit more flexibility. Up to this point, we have heard evidence from Adam on our 4 board goals. We have gotten some staff communication, and then we will be getting Adam's self-evaluation.
He emailed that to us last week.
He did. Okay, so we have Adam's self-evaluation. So all of that data, Chris, at some point, because we don't have the fillable thing for you, or do we get the fillable?
Yep, that was on the email that he
So
sent.
you have a fillable sheet, we've all seen this before. So you should have all of the information to be able to go down and fill that out. If you have any questions at all, like, geez, does Adam do this? Is he a 4? Is he a 2? Is he a 3? Please reach out and call him, and don't guess. Give him the opportunity to give you whatever information either way. And then we need to have this completed, sent to Chris, and then tallied by, when would you like it?
I'd like it at the beginning of Thanksgiving week, so if we
What
can
would
get
that
it.
be?
Like the
that'd be-
20th?
Yeah, like the 20th.
November?
Great.
Is that the 20th? I
20,
I think
let me look at
November
my
20th.
calendar.
November 20th, yeah, because Thanksgiving is on the 23rd.
Yeah, the 20th would be great. If everybody could give me things by the 20th, that would be
So
wonderful.
2 weeks' time.
Okay, so we need to get this evaluation piece to Chris completed by November 20th.
And Adam sent out all of those documents.
Yes, he
It's
did.
not just, his self-evaluation and the fillable form, he sent out all of
that stuff.
the documents
So,
that you need.
again, if you have any questions about any of those, please get with Adam, but we really need to have that completed by the 20th. Chris then needs to take all of those and compile it, and it's not just a simple, like, hit a button. So please, we need to get that to him by the 20th. Any questions on that? Then once all of that's compiled in December, we vote on his evaluation and the scores that come out from this. All right, next, we are going into a closed session for personnel and negotiation. Can I please have a motion to go into closed session?
Motion to go into closed session.
Second?
Can you take us through roll call, Amanda?
Amanda, yes? Chris?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And Nancy.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously to go into closed session.
Motion to come out of closed session?
Second.
Okay, first, Sarah, second I heard Chris. Sorry, I know there was someone else, but, can you take us through roll call?
Amanda, yes. Chris?
Yep.
Dave?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And Nancy.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously to come out of closed session.
All right, can I get a motion to accept the minutes from our October meeting?
I move that the Williamston Board of Education approve the minutes for the regular meeting held on October 23rd, 2023, as presented.
Second?
So first up, second, Sarah. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We do not have any roll call votes. Can I please get a motion for the band trip?
Make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education approve the high school band trip to Cleveland, Ohio on April 19th and 20th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, first, Chris, second, Dave. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, our board goes there. We do have some retirements. It seems crazy that it's this time of year that we're getting them. I know we have one preschool teacher who is already gone. Like my kids, I mean, I worked with her. She was a fabulous teacher, a huge loss to this district. Another teacher, I appreciate the fact, gosh, it's October and he put his letter in to make sure that we have some planning. Again, another really tough loss for Williamston. I'm sure he is gonna go on and do other things. You know what I'm saying?
No, Joe's done a lot of great things for the district, Mr. Rasmus, but I think, in particular, his leadership of the Math Science Academy, which was in a tough spot, for a number of reasons when he took it over, and, he has really rejuvenated, the approach. He has been, receptive to feedback and has done some really nice things there. And one of the compliments I gave him last year after going to their showcase evening, which is usually in the spring, around May, was that when you talk about depth of knowledge, the research class that it showcased at that event is really DOK4. That's the highest level where kids are creating new knowledge. And it's being done in a way where the students are genuinely interested in what they're learning and have fully engaged, nuanced conversations with visitors to that showcase. I mean, they're talking shop, they're speaking the language, they're able to explain the new research that they have created, the new knowledge that they've created. And I think having that type of authenticity, interest in learning, not just for the sake of getting a grade, but because they're genuinely interested in learning the material, is one of the highest compliments and reflections upon an educator that you can have. So Joe has done a tremendous job and great advocate for his department, and wish him the best. And we still have him for a while, so. So he'll be around for at least another semester and a half, so.
Okay, next is citizen comments. We do not have any citizens. Board member reports and requests.
This will be in my report at our next meeting, but ISOA met last week and we toured North Star, the newly renovated North Star and Heartwood schools, and talking with Jason Malma, superintendent of the ISD, I just said, I think that it is so important that every board member knows and understands what those schools do, and also has the opportunity at any point in time to contact him to set up a tour. So if you want to tour those or get more information about, we do have our students that go to those schools, so if you want to learn more or tour, please reach out to him. Also, we have Pancakes with Santa coming up December 2nd, I believe. I could be totally wrong because that's also the day of the parade here in town, but I do believe it's that day. So it's coming up quick. Tickets are available.
I thought it was December 2nd or 3rd.
December 2nd.
The second.
Yeah, 2nd, yeah, which is that Saturday, yep. It's always a fun
I
event.
would go, it is fun, and I would go check out Santa and Mrs. Claus. Wait, yeah, Santa and Mrs. Claus show up.
Mhm.
They are remarkable taking time with those kids. Anything else? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn? Oh,
Motion.
wait, do you have something?
The letter.
Oh, shoot.
It's under correspondence.
Yes, sorry. Under correspondence, we have our housing letter. We're gonna pass that around. We will all sign that. I am trying to, get information from the townships, the 4 townships that we haven't been in contact with about, how best to get them that letter. And that has been proven to be difficult, as Sarah has said. So I'm still kind of working that out, but we do need to sign that tonight. And then Adam and I will set a game plan of getting that mailed, or how we move forward with getting them. And then moving forward with some meetings and looking at our housing situation. Do you want us to send that now?
No, just
Or
as
just
long as
make
it's
sure you
signed
sign
before
it.
you leave.
Yes, so please make sure you stop up here and we can sign it before you leave. Okay, a motion, is that all? Motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All right, first Sarah, second Chris, all in favor?
Aye.
Any